have to talk about. The Chicago Bears taking on the 12-4 New Orleans Saints. Now, the Saints are a 9-point favorite to win this game. A lot of people think that this game is going to be a blowout. Now, for the Bears, they backdoored their way into playoffs with the Arizona Cardinals being defeated by the LA Rams. So that is the only reason why the Bears are in the playoffs, because the Bears had two ways to make it into the playoffs and clinch the last spot, which was a 7th seed. They could either beat the Green Bay Packers or they needed Arizona to lose. And of course, they got beat by the Green Bay Packers 35-16, but Arizona lost, which is why the Chicago Bears are in the playoffs. Meanwhile, the New Orleans Saints right now they're rolling. They look like the second best team in the NFC behind the Green Bay Packers, who are currently on the bye after they clinched number 1 overall seed. So they're not going to be playing till next week in the divisional round. But the Saints had a pretty dominant victory against the Carolina Panthers. They looked really good. So I'm looking at Chicago. And in my opinion, if the Chicago Bears do not make it to the NFC Championship game, I think making it to the playoffs this year is a waste. And a lot of you Bears fans may be like, how is making it to the playoffs a waste? Well, Matt Nagy isn't a great coach. And Mitchell Trubisky is not a great quarterback. And I'm not going to go back and forth with none of you Chicago Bears fans about Mitchell Trubisky, whether he's a good quarterback or not, because it's pretty obvious that he is an average quarterback. I'm tired of the excuses for Mitchell Trubisky. I'm not about to argue with you Chicago Bears fans. You know doggone well that Mitchell Trubisky is only good for right now, but moving forward, he should not be the guy. If there is a significant better upgrade in the offseason, the free agency, or in the NFL draft, if you happen to have a great quarterback like Trey Lance or Zach Wilson falling your laps, wherever it's your turn to pick, you go ahead and you draft him. But I don't have a lot of confidence in Mitchell Trubisky. Well, you can say, well, JT, look at his numbers. Okay, you played the Minnesota Vikings and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Neither one of those teams had anything to play for. The Jacksonville Jaguars were taking for Trevor Lawrence. On top of that, Mitchell Trubisky didn't really play all that great against the Green Bay Packers last week. That was the game that was going to convince me and show me that Mitchell Trubisky deserved to be brought back as a quarterback for the Chicago Bears in 2021 when the 2021 NFL season kicks off. Well, he was 33 of 42, 252 pass yards and 1 interception. Chicago Bears fans are just so quick to bring up the stats with Mitchell Trubisky. It's easy to have great numbers when all you do is just throw checkdowns every single play. Alex Smith throws checkdowns because, you know, that's Alex Smith. But Mitch Trubisky doesn't even see wide receivers running open down the field. Do you know how many times Allen Robinson was open down the field and Mitch Trubisky simply didn't throw his way, that he simply just took the check down? 3 times I kind of last week in that Green Bay Packers loss that the Chicago Bears suffered, that Allen Robinson was open down the field and Mr. Trubisky opted to take the short conservative pass versus trying to throw the ball down the field to Allen Robinson, who is one of the best jump ball wide receivers in the NFL. We just don't really happen to see that all that often because they don't throw the football down the field all that often with Mitchell Trubisky. He is check down Charlie 2.0. That's why his stats look so deflated. So with the Green Bay Packers, if I'm their defensive coordinator, I'm saying, hey man, if we're going to get beat by Mitchell Trubisky, he's going to have to beat us by throwing the football down the field. Because the biggest play that the Chicago Bears offense had last week was that big throw. It was pretty much one of the only shots downfield that Mitchell Trubisky took all game, which was a completion to Darnell Mooney, who ended up catching the ball, and it was an underthrown pass. He had to readjust for the ball, and Mitchell Trubisky throws the ball, you know, in front of the wide receiver with some accuracy. It probably could be a touchdown. So you look at Mitchell Trubisky and the fact that he just likes to be conservative and takes the check down. If you're Green Bay, you got to force Mitchell Trubisky to hold on to the football, throw the football downfield, and then on top of that, you have to stop David Montgomery. The only way the Chicago Bears have a shot at winning this game is if, one, their defense plays the best game that they've ever played this season. On top of that, David Montgomery has to have an incredible game when he just goes Derrick Henry. He has to go for like a Derrick Henry kind of stat line, 152 rushing yards for like 3 touchdowns or something like that. He has to have a Superman caliber performance like we saw Derrick Henry have in the playoffs last year if the Chicago Bears want to have a chance of winning this game. So if you're the New Orleans Saints, this is really all you have to do to beat the Chicago Bears. Stop the run, force Mitchell Trubisky to throw the football downfield. And for the Chicago Bears, okay, you have to worry about Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas coming back. Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, according to reports, are both expected to play. So for the Chicago Bears defense, this isn't going to be easy for you. So you're going to have to help out that offense because, trust me, they're going to need it. You're going to have to force a turnover or two, get the ball back to your offense. Not only get the ball back to your offense, but get the ball back to your offense with good field position on the opposite side of the 50 or near the red zone, because I don't really think that the Chicago Bears are going to have a lot of success sustaining drives against the New Orleans Saints defense. The New Orleans Saints defense has also had a midseason turnaround. We talk about the midseason turnaround that Seattle's defense has had this year. Well, New Orleans defense has had a big turnaround as well as they have started to get healthy. So when you look at how well the Saints defense has played over the second span of the season, I'm looking at the Chicago Bears offense. Everybody's talking about how this offense at one point was the best offense in the NFL. Like, at one point, it was really people saying that, believe it or not. There was people out there saying, man, this Bears offense looks scary, man. This was like one of the best offenses in the NFL. I said, are you drunk? You're facing the Minnesota Vikings and the Jacksonville freaking Jaguars. Neither one of those two teams have had been able to stop anybody with a pulse on the offense on the defense side of football. So, of course, it's easy to look good when you're playing bad defensive teams. And I know I may make it seem like I'm hating on the Chicago Bears, but I'm just really being honest with myself. And I'm being honest with you guys. Because, listen, the Chicago Bears are not going to win this game. I'm taking the Saints to win this game right away, and I'm going to take them to cover. I think they win this game 31-13. I think this game is going to be pretty ugly. I think that Mitchell Trubisky is going to have a Superman caliber performance for the Chicago Bears to win this game, and that's not going to happen. He struggled against Green Bay not once, but twice. When Mitchell Trubisky has played against great teams, he hasn't been good. You played against the Packers twice. You got dominated twice. Mitchell Trubisky didn't play good in both of those games. He didn't even throw a touchdown last week. He had several underthrown balls. He had several passes that he just completely ignored the wide receiver downfield just to opt and take the short check down route. So excuse me if it may seem like I'm hating, but I just think that I'm being honest. The New Orleans Saints are going to win this game. For the Chicago Bears, making it to the playoffs just seems like it's putting this franchise back 5 years, because you still don't have your quarterback of the future, because I promise you it's not Mitchell Trubisky. We saw that last week and we're going to see it again. But hey, Mitchell Trubisky has the opportunity to prove me and a lot of people wrong in terms of him being a franchise guy for the Chicago Bears moving forward going into next season. If he has a good performance against the New Orleans Saints and he's able to get the Chicago Bears to a victory and to the divisional round of the playoffs next week. But I doubt that will happen because Mitchell Trubisky hasn't been good against good teams with good defenses all this year. So excuse me if I think that the New Orleans Saints are going to win this game, and the Saints are going to win this game pretty handily. This defense may keep them in this game for a quarter or two, but at the end of the day, your defense can only do so much if your offense consistently goes 3 and out and can't sustain drives. So I am going to take the New Orleans Saints to get the victory 31-13, and I'm going to take them to cover as well, because listen, I think the Chicago Bears making it to the playoffs, man, was probably the worst thing that could happen to the Chicago Bears fan base. I know Chicago Bears and you guys are one of the best fan bases in the NFL and things like that. I know you guys love to see your team in the playoffs, but really think about it. Now that your team is in the playoffs, you're not going to have a chance to get one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So you're pretty much going to be stacked with Mitchell Trubisky for next year if you can't find any better options, which the quarterback market right now looks pretty weak. You're pretty much going to be in a position that you can probably draft Mac Jones to Kyle Trask, depending on how much you like those guys. But even then, those guys aren't really ideally looked at as franchise quarterbacks like a Trey Lance, a Zach Wilson, a Justin Fields, or a Trevor Lawrence. And on top of that, you bring back Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy potentially for a couple more years. So making it to the playoffs looks like more of a negative